Okay, so let's start. Hi. Today we're going to talk about the midah, the attribute of humility, anava, and I want to talk about it, and I hope to talk about it through a couple of different people in Tanach, and also through different perspectives that we see from the words of the Hachamim. So the first thing let's start with is what is humility? So humility is really I wanted to show through the class how it's really not, it's really a balance between perspective and finding our objectives and what finding our uniqueness in our perspective and how that's going to relate outward. So it's and not getting lost in our subjective projections and interpretations and seeing in ourselves and others. It's really about being as objective as we can be. And I want to elaborate on that as we continue in the class. So obviously we cannot talk about Anava without talking about Moshe, right? And anyone who's learned, and I hope this isn't going to be said in a redundant way, I'm sure you all heard this, but I hope to bring a different spin on it, I hope. So Moshe Rabbeinu is said to be, here, let's share the screen, bring up some sources. Moshe Rabbeinu is said to be, as anyone, learned even a little bit, I'm sure you've heard this, right? Va'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama. That Moshe is the most anav, the most humble person, mikol ha'adam, out of all the people, asher al pnei ha'adama, on the earth. Now, it's very interesting because we read this, at least for me, and I read a lot of different things. I have to give give credit where credit's due, and this is also part of our shiur, that I took a lot of, I read Rabbi Tlushkin's book, A Code of Ethics, of Jewish Ethics, highly recommended, and he brought a lot of different things about Moshe and his anava that really that gave me a different perspective that I hope to portray to you. But I think we hear this a lot and we sort of take this for granted. But something that I was reading and that I learned and I looked a little more into was Moshe was an amazing leader with amazing attributes. So what is it about his anava that stands out as the attribute that defines him? So let's just take a step back for a minute and talk about Moshe and then go into that. So Moshe was someone who had an immense amount of courage and he fought for injustice, right? Just if the story about the Mitzri that was hitting the Jew and he kills the Mitzri to save the Jew from being beaten. The fact that he was saved, that he saved the daughters of Yitro that were by the well and were being harassed by the Midiani shepherds. He saw that was unjust and he saved them. We saw that he had an immense amount of compassion, right? When Miriam, his sister, which is what this story is taken from, says Lashon Hara about him and gets punished, he prays for her, right? He has an immense amount of compassion towards others, and obviously he prays for the nation many times, right? To be saved, he prays to God to save Am Yisrael from many different sins that they do throughout the time of the Midbad. And he obviously has major leadership skills, taking us out, standing up against Paro, the leader of the biggest empire at the time. These are all not small things to have in one person. These are all amazing characteristics that I think people would be lucky if they had one of them, right? But yet Moshe is defined by his anava, by his humility. And I want to look at that and why out of all the other things I just said that are great things in and of themselves, and especially together, is why is the anava standing out, and what can we learn from that about anava in ourselves? So we see that one thing about his anava is he has a very clear perspective of his strength and his strengths and his weaknesses. When God picks him to be the leader, he says, how am I to go to Paro? How am I to be the one to take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, right? He says, I'm not one that is able to speak, lo ish devarim anochi, right? Which is ironic that he says lo ish devarim anochi and then he writes sefer devarim, but anyway, that's just a nice, play on that. But anyway, he realizes that he's not that type of person at that point. He develops into that person through his life, but at that point he was not. And God tells him, okay, Aharon, your brother, is going to be your partner in this to help you overcome these things and develop into that. And that's essentially what happens, right? He goes through the whole process of dealing with Paro, with the Makot, and taking Bnei Israel out with Aharon by his side, and then developing his own sense of leadership. So that is part of it, is realizing, is with humility, is realizing where I am now and how to get somewhere else and to better myself. And Moshe realizes that through his being chosen as the leader. And then another thing that I think is even more, that stands out even more about his Anava is that, hold on, is that Moshe, it says about Moshe, right? Pe el pe edaber bo. God is telling, this is in the same story, when God is reprimand, basically Miriam talks Lashon Hara about Moshe to Aharon, and the Hachamim say, what did she say? And a lot of them interpret the fact that she was sort of looking down upon the fact that he separated from his wife, and she says, we're also Nevi'im, because Aharon and Miriam were also Nevi'im, and we didn't separate from our spouses. So why did Moshe, why does he think he's better than us, that he has to separate from his spouse? And God basically says, because he is better than you, and he says, Pe'el pe daber bo, I speak to him, mouth to mouth, face to face. I don't speak to him with images or riddles or in pictures or dreams, right? A lot of the Nevi'im had dreams or symbols that they had to interpret. Moshe, it was direct. He had this direct line, this obviously unique relationship, right? That's why he was so special, that he had this direct line to God. And therefore, the Chamim say he couldn't be with his wife because he always had to be in a state of tahara and not be with his wife, and that's why he had to separate from her. So the point here is that we see is that it coupled with his anava, because is also said in the same story, and so we see that it's two sides of the same coin. Is that his anava comes from his great understanding and great relationship with God, because he sees himself in relation to God, and therefore, when you look at yourself in connection to God and in relation to God, you have no choice but to be completely humbled by the fact of thinking, who am I as a human to be haughty or think that I'm so great when I'm comparing myself to God that is, all capable, all knowing, and obviously in a different realm than anything I could ever possibly conceive of or do. So how am I to be anything other than humble? So Hachamim say, know who you're standing in front of. God, you're standing in front of God, right? We're living and relating to the fact that we're living our life in front of God and in relation to God. Then it puts things in perspective and makes me realize that who am I to judge anyone else or myself and think that I'm so great or look down on anyone else when I put things in perspective of me against God, God, the all-knowing, all possible, everything. So one thing that we see from Moshe's Anava is that the more one has a deeper connection and relation to God, the more anav and humble they're going to be, because they have that perspective and that objectivity of themselves and don't get lost in thinking, oh, I'm so great. Okay. So, and we see this also as an outgrowth of this. By the way, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to interrupt me or write in the chat or turn on your microphone, feel free. We also see that that is an outgrowth of this, or I don't know if you want to say outgrowth or a continuation or a connection to this, however you want to call it. We see that Aharon is also a very big example that we can learn for Anava, because we see that Aharon, we don't always think about this, but if you look at the timeline of what's going on, it's not glossed over, but unless you look for it, you don't necessarily have to process it. But basically, Moshe left Egypt for a very long part of time where he was in Midian, right? He was living in Midian with Yitro and his family there, and Sipporah and all there for many, many years till God told him to go back to Mitzrayim, right? And during that time, Aharon was essentially leading the nation in Mitzrayim, as you know. And Moshe now, if you can imagine, Aharon is the leader of the nation. His brother who disappeared for many years comes back, and now he's the leader. I think many people that were in that position would feel jealousy, would feel anger, would feel resentment, right? They wouldn't necessarily feel so positive about their brother coming in and taking their role that they established for all these years. And Aharon, we see, has none of those feelings because God tells him, and this is from God, right? That God calls Moshe Anav, and God says this next statement about Aharon. So we're saying they're not faking it, right? It's God's vouching for them. So it says v'gam here, in the bolded here, v'gam hinehu yotzeh lekatecha v'ra'as samach belibo. God says when Aharon comes to greet you and welcome you back in to Mitzrayim to help lead the nation and get them out, he's samach belibo. He's happy in his heart. Like he's feeling his true happiness about the fact that his brother is going to come and lead the people out. So where does that simcha come from? How is one, I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to feel that way, probably not. If someone comes in and usurps my role that I've been building up for all these years, I don't know if my emotion would be happiness, right, for that person. So what is the simcha of Aharon here? What does he see? How is he able to have the simcha? He sees that my job and my purpose and my mission is not going to be taken away by someone else fulfilling their job and their purpose and their mission. And yes, maybe my job for these years was to lead the nation, but now it's Moshe's turn to come take the step, and that has nothing to take away from me and my goal and my purpose and my potential. So when you see the world in that way, and we see that I only have me to worry about. I don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing because I have to worry about what I'm doing. And if I'm doing it, it's to the best of my ability and not if he or she or anyone else is doing to their ability, because it's two separate things, right? And a lot of this we could see in terms of business or any success, right? It doesn't matter if there's 100 people doing what I want to do. If I could do it better or in a different way or in a more unique way that's more uniquely me, then people are going to come and be drawn to that, right? Like even if you look at all the people that are now that all the fast food chains and all the people on Instagram that are doing all these different things. What's making this one better than that one? Who's ever more authentic and more unique and more realizing their purpose, they're going to do better. So that doesn't mean I have to be threatened by someone else. And then there's the idea also of kinat sofrim, of being jealous of those that are better than you, not jealous in terms of I don't want them to do good, but jealous as a motivation for me to do better. And those are two different things. So we see that humility and realizing my uniqueness and my role and my capabilities in relation to my place and my relationship with God and the God-given gifts and talents and abilities that he gave me and my relationship with him and bringing that into the world, that's something that allows me to be humble and should allow me to see myself as a part of the puzzle and not above everyone else. So I think that that's something that allows us, we spoke about in the previous classes about being judgmental and being critical of others. And when you have the proper perspective of your place, it doesn't leave room for you to be critical of someone else because you're only looking at yourself and building on yourself. And I want to change gears for a minute and talk about, so these were obviously Moshe and Aharon were two immensely humble people that were able to see their unique roles and their unique place and their unique potential. But let's look at I want to look at Yosef for a minute because Yosef's an interesting character because he sort of goes full circle, right? We meet Yosef as a young 17-year-old, teenage boy who's has everything going for him. He's his father's favorite. He has good looks. He has, he's running the show, right? And he gets haughty, like it gets to him. All of that, all his good looks and favor get to him, and he starts to talk, a little too much and brag a little too much. And this leads to a lot of problems, right? He tells his dreams to his brother, to his father, and oh, I'm so great, and you're gonna bow to me, right? The dreams of the of the stars and the sky and the wheat, that it's the sign that everyone's going to bow to me, and look, I'm so great and I'm going to be a leader. And that was obviously all true. It does come to fruition. However, the way he exposed it was obviously very, very in a very haughty manner and not in a humble manner. And therefore, this leads to a lot of problems, and obviously leads to his brothers hating him and selling him, and not a good outcome, obviously. And we see that the fact that he felt this way was not wrong. It was how he exposed it. And we see that from oh, I didn't bring the pasuk. Oh, I thought I brought the pasuk. Oh, here, no, I flipped the slides for a second. So here we see, I skipped the slide, that when Yosef tells the stories, his father, his father, like, tries to reprimand him or brush him off about it. But then it says, his brothers were very jealous. His father held the information, meaning his father didn't like how it was exposed, but he knew that there was some essence of truth to it. So that's the difference here, that Yosef said it in a haughty way, but Yaakov realized this wasn't the time or place, but he's going to remember that this is something that needs to be held for importance. And then we fast forward to when Yosef goes into Egypt, works at Potiphar's house, goes into jail, and ends up being called back to Paro's house to interpret Paro's dreams. We see he's a very different Yosef, right? Because Paro tells him, I want you to interpret my dream. And Yosef's answer is, Biladai Elohim Yanet Shalom Paro. He says, I only am able to interpret or tell you what God tells me. So he all of a sudden now he's changed his tune. He's humble. He realizes his gifts and his dreams are because of God, and he realizes that perspective. And I think from Yosef we see what caused that change, right? What caused him from being this haughty, bragging teenage boy to someone who's humble and realizing his gifts are from God. And in the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that it was his suffering. It was his suffering in Bet Potiphar with Potiphar's wife. It was his suffering in the jail, right? In the jail in Mitzrayim. And we see that when anyone, God forbid, goes through suffering in their life, and even I'm not even talking great suffering like that, even on minute suffering, it changes perspective, right? If you lose something that you thought you had, even on a little level, or something changes, it starts to really put things in perspective, and it humbles you. And especially when you think about our fragility as humans. And I want to read this quote to you that Rabbi Abraham Torsky, who was also a doctor, right? He said, he goes, medically speaking, I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I say it right, but medically speaking, all it takes is a minute clot of blood, perhaps only a millimeter in size, to clog a crucial blood vessel to the brain and instantaneously transform intellectual genius into a mentally defective person and a highly praised executive into a virtually vegetative state. With such fragility, how can one possibly be vain? Right? So he's saying it from a medical perspective, like, look how fragile we are. One tiny little blood clot could all of a sudden, destroy a person. I mean, obviously, he didn't even say to kill them. Obviously, it could kill you also. But this is even, he's saying the juxtaposition of someone who all of a sudden, this genius that has some minor brain, thing, all of a sudden has nothing, or And if we look at it in that perspective, we have no choice but to be humble and realize how our gifts and our abilities are so fragile and fleeting that we should never take them for granted or think that I'm better than anyone else. Because if I think I'm better than anyone else, I don't know how the tides could change in 1 second, right? And I think the person who depicts this to me in the most clear way is Hannah. Hannah, the mother of Shmuel. She was barren, right? She's Akara. And then she gets, she ends up getting pregnant, has Shmuel. I actually gave a whole class on her for a different series I did. So I'm not going to go so deep into her, but she's one of my favorite characters. But I want to focus for a little bit for this point of being humble on her tefillah, that she, at her tefillah of Thanksgiving, that after Hoda'ah, that she thanks God after she has her baby. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the main theme of the tefillah here is opposites. She talks about how everything's in God's hands, right? And al tarbut tidabru gvoha gvoha. Don't talk and be haughty and talk highly of yourself, because el deot Adonai. Because in the end, it's all from God. It's all God is the all-knowing. You don't know. You're right. You don't know. God's the all-knowing. And she talks about how the kishakivodim chatim, why can't I think of the word in English? The arrows. Sorry, the arrows of the archers. They could miss their mark, and the people that you thought were weak could be the ones that are leading the battle. The people that are satiated and have so much food, all of a sudden they could lose everything and be the ones that are starving. A person that is barren could have plenty of children. A person that has a lot of children could, God forbid, lose those children, right? And she ends, she says, Hashem memitum chayeh, God is the one who gives life and takes away. Morish she'uvayah, right? He's the one that brings people up and puts people down. Mekim afadal, right? God is the one who's running the show, essentially, and it has nothing to do with us. And we might be in a place for 1 minute that we think, oh, we're so great, and we could lose that in 1 second. And we even see this in our own limited abilities, right? We don't always put it in perspective this way, but think about even the smartest people that could be, intellectual geniuses and have doctorates and be Talmidei Chachamim, but if all of a sudden their pipe bursts, they need to call a plumber because they don't know how to fix it, right? Meaning, even though that plumber is someone that has less education and might not be as smart or have the honors as me, but he could do something that I can't, right? So we have to put in perspective how limited our abilities really are. And I think we really see this, or we saw this and see this simultaneously during this pandemic. And like we see that, yes, the doctors and the nurses did amazing work, but they did. And at the same time, we have to also look, I was reading an article about the janitorial staff in the hospital that we don't even think about, but they're the ones that are going in and sanitizing all these rooms after these patients leave, or God forbid, other things. So they're the ones that are keeping the hospital running from the ground up, so that the doctors and nurses could be saving lives, right? And if they didn't do what they did, then the doctors and nurses wouldn't be able to do what they do. So we never should look and say, I'm better than that person, because that person, whoever that may be, has their unique role. And this is something that we should think of, is that when we look at our achievements and our things, and if I say, I'm so smart and I have so much money and I have good looks and I have all these things, these great positive things, that shouldn't make me feel haughty. That should make me, in the opposite sense, be humble and say, wow, I have all these things. That means my job to fulfill my potential and do good in this world is that much harder, right? I have a lot of money. I should be supporting charities. I should be helping people and doing research to cure diseases or whatever it is. I'm very smart. I have a great intellect. I should be teaching people. I should be helping people, right? All these things. So we don't know. Also, like someone who's at a, so to speak, lower ability than you, that you think could be fulfilling their potential better than you, because they only have so high to go and they're reaching that. And you might have the ability to go even higher and you're not reaching that, because you're saying, oh, look at me, I'm so much better than everyone else. But you're really not, because you have to climb the ladder so much higher, right? So I think this is something that, back to Moshe, obviously, is that when we look at it all in relation to God and our connection with God and our role as being, as doing tikkun olam, and fulfilling God's mission in this world of continuing to perpetuate creation and spreading ethics and righteousness in the world, then we have to think about how we're doing that and our tool and ability to do that properly, and not compare myself to how someone else is doing it, right? I want to talk about for a minute now, in connection to children, because as adults, most of us, obviously for parents and teachers who are dealing with children on a regular basis, this is more applicable, but even anyone who deals with any children, that we are automatically in a position of authority as adults to these children, right? And we shouldn't look at that and say, I'm better than this child because I'm an adult and I could control them. God forbid that's how abuse, happens. And I'm not even talking about, I mean, obviously physical abuse is horrible, but I'm talking about even mental abuse. Even the way we talk to children is so critical because they are, so to speak, beneath us, and they're looking to us for guidance. And I was reading something here. I want to talk about. No, I don't want to get to that for a second. But I was so that when we talk to children and when we are modeling to our children, that we have to realize that they're taking us as the role model for their whole framework of their reality, right? Of their life. They only have the adults in their life to look up to, and that we have to develop them in a positive way, and realize and show them that we have to relate to everyone with respect and properly, because or else they're not going to know that, and the bullies are going to be the ones that think, oh, because I'm stronger or better or whatever, that I could put down someone else. And I think we have to realize that, and we see this also with the king of Israel, right? When it talks about anointing a king in Devarim, it says when the king is chosen, he has to write a Sefer Torah. And it says, why does he have to write a Sefer Torah? And it says he has to be with him all the time, right? And he has to learn and study this Torah, kol yemei chayav, right? Why? So that he realizes that he has a fear of God, and he realizes that he, as an individual, even though he is the king and ruling the nation, he is the individual has to always answer to God. And the ability, this is like one of very strong, I think the emphasis on this is the ability that he shouldn't think that he's above his brethren. And they call him echav, his brothers, because it's showing even though you're a king, you have this sort of look at yourself as equal to humanity in terms of God, right? And not think that you're better and become God, like many leaders do, a dictator and doing things that are obviously harmful to other people. And I think when you realize this, and you realize that my job and my place is my opportunity versus my something that was given to me, then we're able to have the proper perspective and be humble. And comes with there's a halacha in the Gemara that talks about, if someone tells you, I mean, it's obviously a very extreme case, but if someone tells you you have to kill this guy or this person, or I'm going to kill you, the question is, are you allowed to kill that person to save your own life? And the Gemara essentially says no. And the way they answer it is that what do you think, that your blood is redder than his, right? Meaning, who are you to judge that your life is better than his, is more holy than his? And that's how we have to always look at it. Obviously not in that extreme situation, but to never think that, why am I better than that person? And this comes down to something that the Hachamim talk about is, and I think that that is really a cure, so to speak, or a antidote for vanity and allowing us to be humble, is it says, who is a smart one who learns from everyone? That it says in Tehillim, that I learned from all those around me. And we see this, I saw this firsthand. We see this again with children. I just want to bring a quick story about something that happened with my daughter that really showed how children are programmed to learn from everything around them. That's how they have to survive, right? They look at their adults, they look at their surroundings. They need to observe and constantly be learning to know what to do and how to function in the world. And as we become adults, we lose that, and we start to have this feeling of, I have to know everything, I should know everything. So we become very defensive if we don't know something. And a few weeks ago, basically because of the pandemic and the fact that school was closed so much, we sadly had barely any school this year for the kids. My daughter, we live in Israel, and my daughter's Hebrew was not where it is not where it should be. So the teacher told me to go get her evaluated and see where her language is, to see like what to do to move forward to make sure she gets on the right level of her Hebrew. So I take her to this evaluation, and I'm sitting in the corner of the room, and she's sitting with the therapist to talk to her, to evaluate her. And she's 4, so they do this all through games and through play, which is how children learn, right? Um, and it's all in Hebrew, and I'm listening. And I never really hear my daughter speak Hebrew because we speak English in the house. So for me, I'm listening and I'm enjoying it. I'm sitting quietly in the corner. And I see that through, a lot of times she'll have to say, Maze, what is this? Or Ani lo yadat, or I don't know. And she was there was no qualms about it. She was so confident through the game or through whatever they were doing to just be like, no, I don't know what this is, or could you tell me what this is, or how to do this, or whatever. And it just really was a lesson to me that there shouldn't be, as we develop, as we grow, there's shame in not knowing and feeling that we must know. And therefore we feel we have to always be better than or prove that we're better than everyone else and show that we know everything when we obviously can't. And to not really to go back to that childhood, the childhood exploration and confidence of learning and being okay with not knowing, and realizing that that's the way we learn and the way we develop, and therefore it allows me to be humble and to realize I don't know everything, therefore I have to learn from everyone, right? um, and we see that also with the greatest people, the people that, not greatest, but the people that are most confident in themselves and their position, are able to ask and question others that seem to be below them, because they don't feel threatened, because they know that they're just expanding their knowledge. So another thing that the Hachamim say about maintaining our humility is, in Pirkei Avot it talks about to always I'm going to just say it out. The pasuk, the Mishnah is here if you want to read it, but I'm just going to say it quickly. Is to realize where is it? Know where you come from, where you're going, and who you're going to be essentially standing in front of for judgment. And what does it mean? Saying, where did you come from? You came from a mere cell, right? A sperm and an egg. You came from a little cell. Who do you think, that's what you came from? Something so tiny and seemingly insignificant that God allowed and science allowed to develop into a human. So don't, look what you came from. And where are you going? Essentially, no matter how much money or how much smarts you have, we're all going to the same place, right? We're all going to be in the ground one day, hopefully after 120, but that's what's going to happen. You can't escape that, right? And who are you going to be standing in front of? You're going to be standing in front of God, right? Melech Malchei Melachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when you put these things in perspective, it allows you to realize that there's no place for me to be anything else but humble. And I want to talk about the aspect of self-confidence in this, because a lot of times people think that humility comes with a lack of self-confidence, and it's the exact opposite, because we see that when you have low confidence, it's a big problem. And we see the example of the Meraglim. I brought the pasuk here that when the spies go to Israel, to Eretz Israel, they come back and they say a lot of things, but I brought this one pasuk to show my point. Is they say, there we saw the Nephilim b'nei Tanach, we saw the giants, v'nehiyeh be'enenu kechagavim, and we were in our eyes like grasshoppers. V'ken hayinu be'enehem, and that's how we were in their eyes. So because we looked at ourselves as bugs, as insignificant, that's how they looked at us. And that's not what the reality was. The reality was at that point that Bnei Israel were very capable of going to capture the land. But then they came back and they changed their whole perspective and the whole mindset, the Meraglim, because of their lack of confidence, and essentially caused 40 years, Chet Meraglim, 40 years in the desert. And this is in exact opposition to what Moshe did, who was the most Anav, that he was able to go and stand and plead his case in front of Paro and get us out of Egypt. So the another quote from, I just want to find what page it was on that I want to bring, because I thought it was also something that Torsky, again, a great quote from him was, a person who is humble because he realizes that he is not fulfilled his God-given potential is stimulated to action to do so. The person with low self-esteem who does not feel there's any purpose in trying because of his it does not feel there's any purpose in trying because of his attitude of what's the use? I can't do it anyway. In short, humility inspires while low self-esteem demoralizes, right? So I think the key here is realizing is that when we realize our unique objective in this world, it leads us to a feeling of action and bettering ourselves and doing what we can, as opposed to someone who has low self-confidence that just feels like there's no point. And I brought this this idea of internal and external locus of control in one of the other classes, but I want to talk about it now for a second in connection to humility. Is that the internal, when someone has an internal locus of control, that they realize that their actions and their outcomes are determined by their efforts and their abilities. The same way, it leads me to realize it's not about what things that I have that are outside of me, right? But it's things that I have that are within me that I could use to affect others in a positive way. I follow this woman, Blimi Heller, who's a parenting coach. She was talking about jealousy and sibling rivalry, and she brought in this quote. She said this quote that I thought really sort of sums up this whole thing, this whole topic of humility. Is she says, because she's talking about parenting and how to deal with sibling rivalry and jealousy amongst siblings, or not even siblings. I mean, she was talking about siblings that could be amongst any kids or any people. She says, when each child is truly seen and appreciated for who it is that they uniquely are, there is less jealousy and competition amongst them. So when any human, when any person, child or adult, realizes and is seen for their unique ability, jealousy is taken away, vanity is taken away, competition is taken away, and we look at ourselves. And I think, to sum it all up, at the end of the day, humility is ability to have a deep sense of self-awareness and self-love. Because essentially, if I don't love myself, then I'm not able to be honest with myself about what I need to do in order to better myself. So it's a deep self-awareness and self-love that allows us to see ourselves in a bigger scheme of things. And this allows us to be humble and not look down at anyone else, and build a better relationship with God and those around us. And yeah, and that's what I think really the goal is, in terms of, Moshe was Anav Mikol Adam, and he was the closest to God, and we could, as much as we can, try to emulate that in our own relationships and our own self-identity. So yeah, I wish us all luck in that, because I don't think it is an easy thing, and I think it's a lifelong struggle to really work on that. And yeah, thank you for coming, and I hope to see you next time.